Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to this intergalactic session called Observability for APIs. As the title mentioned, we'll talk about observability. Hopefully that's what you're here for. If not, stick around anyway. You might learn something. If it is, then stick around and same again. You'll definitely learn something. So my name is Arlemi. I lead developer advocacy here at Postman, and I'm here with Mudit. Mudit, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Mudit. I work as a software engineer for the engineering foundation team here at Postman. And I'm really excited to share my experience with API observability and monitoring and how Postman helps kind of give a seamless experience for the same. And yep, over to you,
Nice.
Alimi.
Thank you. So yeah, Mudit is going to be my resident expert. I'm just going to be the one that does the talking. But when it comes to like observability, Mudit has the experience and he's actually leading these efforts in Postman as well. So he's going to be a great partner for this session. So speaking of the session, let's jump into the agenda and how we're going to walk through it today. We want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So we'll first start by defining what is API observability. We'll talk about the differences. So you'll see we'll talk about quite a bit actually about API monitoring during the session. They kind of work hand in hand, but they are different. Same, but different. So we'll kind of talk about the difference between the two. And then we'll jump into the live demo and the hands-on session. And we'll see how you can observe API in Postman. And then before the end, we'll share some resources with you and we'll do a Q&A session. So again, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom, right next to the chat button. So please ask your questions there, and then someone from the team is going to answer, and we'll also have a look at them towards the end. So that was about the session and about us, but we do want to learn a bit more about yourselves as well. So that's going to help us know who we're chatting with. Obviously, we can't unmute everyone and ask you one by one, so I'm going to run a little poll to learn things about yourselves. So you should have a poll showing up in front of you now with two questions. First, how long have you been using Postman for? Are you kind of a new one in the space? So you've been using for less than a year, maybe 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or more than 5 years. And I already see some people that have been using for more than 5 years. And then the second question is your role. So API observability lives in different places and can be done by like different people. But are you a developer? Are you DevOps, tester, QA, or other? So I'll give you 30 seconds to answer that, and then I'll look at and then I'll have a look at the results. Okay, cool. So we've got mostly people that have been using Postman for less than a year, 38% of you, and then it's about another third, 1 to 3 years, and that's what we see most people. The usage of Postman has like increased exponentially over the last few years, so that it's not a surprise. But we have 15% of you that have been using for between 3 and 5 years, and more than 15% more than 5 years, which is kind of impressive. And in terms of roles, it's kind of a very well spread around. So we've got like 20% developer, 20% DevOps, 30% tester and QA, and then 50%, which is just other. So it's interesting. I kind of would like to know what are these other roles. So if you want to post them in the chat, kind of let us know what's your role, because I was trying to be exhaustive in the list of roles, but clearly I've missed some. So please do share them in the chat, because that's very valuable for us. So that's who you are, and that's interesting. But another thing I'd like to know, now that we know who you are, is what you do in relations with API observability. So for that, I'll just prompt you with another series of questions. So first, do you know the difference between API monitoring and observability? So yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Can you repeat the question? Or are you already doing either of them? So maybe you're doing a bit of monitoring, maybe you're doing a bit of observability, maybe you're doing both, or maybe you're doing neither of them. Would you think it's something that's like well spread around observability, or is it still like something that's up and coming as a practice?
So I think with monitoring, like there have been like standard monitoring practices that have been used, but the observability practices are something that are still new in industry. Like some people still follow like uh, a very older logging practice. Let's
Yeah.
say like log everything, and in millions of log we will find out the issue.
Okay.
While now, if you look at it, the things have changed a lot. There have been a lot of advancements in open telemetry as well as application performance observability, where the application itself can send out metrics, logs, and traces so that it is easy for the developers to find the issue and fix it in production.
You're already spoiling the rest of the session there. But I think so. What you're saying is kind of what we're seeing here. So we see
Yeah,
this 42% of you who don't do either. There's none of you who knows the difference between API monitoring and observability. So that's very interesting. And then there's about 25% of you doing observability and 42% doing monitoring. Cool. So let's start with the questions to you. Let's look at what we're going to learn. We're going to learn what is observability, how to do it, the different integrations that are available. And then we'll jump just a little bit into like reporting, which is a higher level of observability. But if we look at the definition, I want to take a step back and think about the API lifecycle. So the API lifecycle is what we think about. Anyone that produces an API will go through that flow. So they start defining, designing, developing, testing, etc. And they have a phase which is called observing. So it's I deployed my API, now I want to observe what's happening. And then on the consumer side, the same way, maybe I want to play with like a communication API. So I'm gonna like discover maybe Vonage, maybe Twilio, maybe I don't know, any communication API. I'll integrate, testing, deploy, and then I'll observe the way I'm using that third-party APIs. So there's two sides to it in terms of observability, but if we had to define it, I'm going to quote Kin Lane, which is our chief evangelist here at Postman. And in one of our blog posts, he defines observability as it refers to the ability to identify any outputs from your API operation and use them to understand the state of your API landscape. So it's not just a simple it works, it doesn't work, but it's kind of understanding the entire landscape. So if we kind of put that in comparison with API monitoring, so API monitoring is, and I'm taking that from a Medium blog post, which I really appreciate. It's kind of a black box. So you don't really care about what is happening in the API itself. You're looking at the result. So it's anything that a user can observe. Maybe it's my API returns a 200 or it returns a 400. Maybe it's just I can see it's taking 5 seconds to return, or it's taking like 0.5 seconds to return. And it's kind of defined as black box monitoring. So it's a form of monitoring made by testing externally visible behavior as a user would see it. If we talk about API observability, then we're not interested in the output. We're interested in what's happening in between, what creates that output. So we're there looking at the data in between. So we're kind of opening that box and we're looking at the 3 pillars of observability. So Mudit mentioned them a bit earlier. So we have metrics, logs, and traces. So to give you a quick definition of each of them, metrics, they are a numeric representation of data measured over intervals of time. So let me try to think about an example of that. Maybe the number of requests that are happening over a certain lapse of time. That's one. Logs. So logs, you may be familiar with that. They're being used in like different places. Maybe you're doing server-side logs. Maybe you're doing like client-side logs. But an event log is an immutable timestamp record of discrete events that happen over time. Another example is like network logs. So maybe you've been digging into your developer console on your browser, maybe, to look what's happening. So you'll see the logs of all of the network calls that are happening. You know exactly when they happened. And you know, like, it's not going to change. It happened already. It's not mutable. And then the last one is traces. So a trace is a representation of a series of causally related distributed events that encode the end-to-end request flow through a distributed system. This one is a bit more of a mouthful for a definition, but a trace is if something happens, we want to follow it throughout its entire life cycle. So if a request starts from the client we want to trace it all the way through the distributed system. It goes from one client to a microservice to another microservice. And that's what we're going to observe. We're going to observe the entire cycle of that call. And that's how we may understand what's happening or not happening in certain cases. So hopefully that gives you a quick overview of like observability, the three main pillars, and we're going to look at them a bit later, and how it compares with monitoring. So we can jump in the hands-on slash follow along part. So this part will be split in two. I'm going to walk you through how to set up a workspace, just so you can like fork like create an API and create a monitor. And then I'll give it to Mudit, who already has a New Relic account, and we'll walk you through a bit more things that for that part, unless you already have a New Relic account, I would just recommend following along. Does that sound good, Mudit? Or did I forget anything?
Yeah, Alimi, that sounds great.
Okay, cool. So let me start sharing another screen, and I'll walk you through. Okay, so hopefully you already logged into your Postman account, and that's your home page. So what we're going to do, we're going to import an API specification for that part. So for my friends on the panelist side, if you can drop the link in the chat for everyone to be able to get, that would be great. But if you go to postman.io/eco API, so that will redirect you to that page. So just keep that link handy. And then in Postman, you can go to your personal workspace, click import at the top there, and then you can do link. So in there, paste the link. So either the unfurled one or like the short link that Pooja shared in the chat. And then you land on that page. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to get there. So click import, select link, paste the link, and then you land on that page. So before clicking import, what you want to do is show the import settings there and make sure that you have the copy collections to workspace ticked on. Once you've done that, you can click import, and then hopefully, if all goes well, you have a new echo collection here, which has a definition, and that's the one we just imported. A linked collection right there. And you'll also get a collection in your workspace. So I have plenty here. So I'm just going to start it. So it goes at the top, and then you'll have it there. So that's the basics. Now that you have that, I'm gonna hand it to Mudit for the fun part.
Okay. Yep.
Nice.
Okay. Thanks, Alimi, for the great introduction. So, yep, I will continue where Alimi left. So here we are, as Alimi showed, like we have our API, and there is a definition to which we have a collection linked. I have also created one sample collection here so that I can show all the things in the demo. So this is the collection that you have got from the link that Alimi shared. So here, so for the demo, we will look into two parts that I will cover. For the first part, we will be looking into API monitoring. And in the second part, we'll be looking into API observability. So for the first part, as we all know, we have critical APIs deployed on production, and we need to observe those APIs and see their behavior, like how exactly they are behaving. Whether it's state checking, like basically checking whether the API is available or not. So for example, here is a Echo API, and I'm simply doing a get call to basically see that my server is up. Or there might be a call to a particular API to basically fetch, let's take, I'm fetching the time here. So I want to know that my behavior is same, like the behavior of the API is same. So for that, one of the tool that is recommended is Postman monitors. So here, as you can see, I have established a monitor on this collection that you might have also got from the spec. So here I'm checking the behavior of my three APIs, and I've also added test here to basically see that any kind of issue that is happening, a test can kind of detect it. And as you can see, the monitor is already created for this collection. For the sake of this demo, I will do so that you guys can also follow along, I will create a monitor for this other collection. So here, I'm just creating a monitor. It will run every hour. I have created.
So you can leave all to default and then just go through, right?
Yes,
Cool.
we can leave all the things to default. And yes, the monitor is ready. We will just run a sample run, so to basically see that everything is working. And yep, my sample API hit is going fine. Now, once the monitor is created, and by using monitor, I am observing my critical APIs, like what is the state of them, whether they are behaving in the right way or not. But when we look at API monitoring, a person cannot just run Postman monitor every 15 minutes or in every hour and look at the stats. That's why API monitoring comes in handy if we can connect our APIs to the APM tool of our choice. So currently, if I go back to my API,
just to check, you said APM. If you don't mind just explaining what this means.
Yes. Okay. So in order to measure the API performance, the Postman provides integrations to various APM tools. By APM, what we mean is application performance monitoring. So an application performance monitoring tool helps you to observe and monitor your APIs in production. So any API that you have deployed in production, the APM agents helps to extract the metrics, logs, and traces so that you can observe the performance and the availability of your production API. So currently, Postman supports integration with two APMs, which is Datadog and Neuralink. For this demo, we will show the integration with Neuralink, but for Datadog also, you can follow the similar steps. And if there's any issue, like we can help. Okay, so what we'll do now is like we'll do the integration with Neuralink. So here, as you can see, when I went to API under the API performance tab, I basically have like two things, like whether I can monitor the API performance or if I want to post monitoring results. So we will first check the second part because the first part is more related into getting the performance metrics from the APM itself. That will be covered under API observability. For API monitoring, what we want to do is basically the monitor that I have created here. I want to post the results of this monitor to my APM so that any kind of issue that is being detected by my monitors or general statistics of my monitors can be observed in the APM tool. So here, since I'm using...
So for now, we're doing the API monitoring. We just want to see it works, it doesn't work. And then we'll do the API observability.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so for posting the monitor results, what we need is a Neuralink key. So you guys can also like create a free Neuralink account. And once you go to this link for generating the key here, it will take you to this page where you can see we have like this license key for your account that is automatically created for every account. So we can copy this key, we can add it here. We can choose the monitor. So as you can see, my other monitor is already sending results to Neuralink. So I will select the new monitor that we just created and we connect it. Okay. Once it's connected, to do basic validation, what we recommend is to go to your Postman homepage, go to global integrations, and there you will see the post monitoring results integration. So all the monitors that you integrate with your APM tool will be shown here. So here, as you can see, my monitor is being showed here. Now, once this is done, now we go to Neuralink to do the further verification, whether our metrics are coming or not. So since we have selected an hourly monitor, so let's not wait for an hour to get the data. Let's go to the monitor again and let's do a manual run of it. Okay, once we have done the manual run, we will go to Neuralink. Okay, and then this is the Neuralink homepage. When you log in into Neuralink, you will see this kind of screen. Now, what we want is the Postman monitoring results come as part of metrics entity in Neuralink. So metrics entity, you go to your, this particular thing, which is exploring everything, which is metrics events. And here you just simply type Postman. So as you can see, all the monitor based metrics are here for Postman. So we have a variety of metrics here, like what is the latency, what is the request count, what is the error rate. So all of these metrics can help you to decide the state of your production API and also look at the health of the monitor. So for example, I'm looking at the total latency of my production API. So here, as you can see, this is currently in milliseconds. So as you can see, we have 195 milliseconds. So the production latency tells about like how slow is my monitor calls. So currently it is the latency of all the requests and all the monitors. Now, this is something that might not be actionable because you need those statistics of latency divided by, let's take the monitor name. So here, as you can see, this is the new monitor that we created, and we can look at the latency of just this monitor.
So
Okay.
The reason why it's not valuable is because maybe you have some that are very slow and some that are very fast, but because it's doing an average, then you don't really know, right?
Yes. And also it is showing all the monitors at once. So
Okay.
that might not be actionable. That's why dimensions, or in other terms, you can say the drill downs based upon various variables is very important in any kind of observability practice. So for example, I can do a drill down by collection name to basically, so currently I have the single collection. Or let's take, we can do it by request name to basically check which request is taking time. So, yep. Okay, now the issue with this kind of practice to fetch the metrics is that you cannot always sit upon and do all these things every day. That's why you need a single place where you can observe everything. So that's where the dashboards comes in practice. So this is a sample dashboard that we have created for our monitor that is sending the results to Postman. So here, as you can see, like we are observing basic vitals like request count of the monitor, latency, and we are observing like the average latency as well as the P99 latency, because we all know averages can fool us. So that's why we're also observing P99 latency. We are also looking at latency per API request. And yes, now looking at the most important part, which is errors, like how many errors are happening, how many tests are failing. So now this gives us a single place to look at the health of our monitor. Now you might have a doubt like how these were actually created, how these queries, how we can create these dashboards. So the metrics that that were shown earlier, they all can be queried by writing a normal SQL. So here, as you can see, I am referring to the metric here, postman.monitor.run.total latency. You can also get the name from here. And I'm just writing a simple SQL sort of query where I'm just fetching the P99 latency and I'm doing the average function and finding the average latency.
So
And
just in case for people who may not be familiar, what's P99?
Got it. Yeah. So when as I said, like averages, especially when we are observing the response time, can fool us. So the average response time might not tell us like how exactly is the performance for a user. So for some user, the performance might be too good, and for some user, performance might be too bad. While average will say everything is okay. That's where percentiles like P99 and P95 comes in as an industry standard to measure metrics like latency, so that you can know like what is the response time for most of my users. So here 99% of the users are receiving response time less than 254 milliseconds. So now it tells the developers like what they need to optimize for, while average can still tell us like everything is good.
Okay.
So that's why P99 latency gives you like a uh, close to experience that is being faced by the end user.
Okay.
So that's why P99 and other percentiles are considered as an industry standard. So yes, that's how referring to these metrics, these tiles have been created so that you have a single place to look for your monitoring performance. Now, the other step to basically close the loop, what we need here is alerting. Now, let's take we are observing request count, and whenever request count goes to 0, that basically indicates that our monitor has stopped. Let's take that case. Now, a person or a developer cannot sit on this dashboard every day and kind of look for it every 15 minutes. That's why alerting comes in handy, so that we can set up alerts. So here I'll just go ahead and create an alert, so that whenever my request count, let's take request count goes to 0. Okay, let's take for 60 minutes. That is how much time we are running the monitor, and let's name it as a test condition. So currently, as you see, everything is green. Otherwise, you will see this critical area. Okay, this will be marked as red. So we can see that our monitor is running fine. And we can just go ahead and create an alert. So here I'm just selecting an existing policy. You can also create a new policy by clicking here. So yes, now our condition is created. So we can go to the alert policy. Okay. So here in the alerts tab, you can see all the policies and the conditions. So here in the policy that we created here, we just refresh it, and here we can see the new alert condition should have been created. So it's loading.
So this is just
yeah.
checking. Is this similar to like the others you would get from like the Postman monitor in Postman if something fails, but just with more details, because you can like set filters on more things?
Yes, because you can set filters on more things. You can actually observe the Postman monitoring responses, and we can also integrate it with multiple channels. So this helps to complete the loop for the organizations that are using APM as their place for observing the metrics.
Okay.
So they can like use their tool, whether it's Datadog or whether it's New Relic, to send the alerts to their concerned destinations. So we'll come to that now, like how we can send these alerts. So once a condition is created, you can send these alerts, like whenever it is breached, to your channel of choice. Like for example, you can send it to webhook, you can create a Jira issue, you can send it to mail or PagerDuty. So currently for this demo, like we'll show you a Slack integration. Like here, I've just created a Slack integration. We select the demo channel and we just send a test notification to see that things are working. And here, as you can, okay, sorry for that. Yeah, and here, as you can see, I just got the test notification here in my Slack channel. So this is how things will look like whenever the alert goes on. Okay. Yep. So that basically shows you like how we can monitor on the Postman monitoring results, and this helps you to detect any kind of issues that is happening with your production APIs, and the Postman monitors are kind of observing that. So yep, that was the first part of the demo. Now we will look at the second part, where we will try to close the loop on API observability as well.
So we see, just quick summary. So we've seen something doesn't work, we create an alert, and now we want to kind of know why it doesn't work. And that's where we go into like the observability part.
Yes, and that's a very important point. Like now, let's look at the entire story now. So there was a production issue that was happening. Our monitors, our Postman monitors detected that and alerted us. Now, once it is alerted, the relevant team is looking into how we can actually fix the issue in production. It is affecting our users. That can be the one case. The other case can be like you're building a new feature and you just want to know like how exactly is your API performance. So you're building the new API and you're doing it in Postman. Like you are creating the definition here and you are adding a new API and you want to know like how your existing APIs are performing. You don't want to breach the baseline of latency or error rate, or basically the current experience that is offered by the application to our end users. That's why these observability metrics are very important. And what Postman helps us to offer is that get these observability metrics close to the API landscape, which is your API definition. And once it is close to your API definition, you can easily look for the metrics, logs, and traces, and basically debug any kind of issue that is happening in production, or look at the current statistics in general, how your APIs are performing. So, yep, let's get into it. So, same area, like I go to my API, we click on the API performance tab, we select the API tool of our choice. Currently we're selecting Neuralink. Now we need to go to this part where we want to check our API performance metrics and get them to Postman. So for this, like we will again go to our API keys tab, but for now, for this case, like we will not use the license key because now we are not sending the data, we are retrieving the data. So what we need is a read-only key to basically create separation of concern. So this is a user key. I will just name it as demo key for now. Okay. And we create this key. And once it's created, I copy the key. I enter the key here, and yes. So now my Neuralink account is linked here. And yeah, as you can see, I have a demo production application deployed on my Neuralink account. So here, now this is the actual application that is working and that is serving the production traffic, and it is showing the production stats, how the performance is being perceived by the users. Now for this, I can also go ahead and attach my dashboards. Like I have attached this dashboard that I have shown in the first part of the demo, which this one, so that I can connect everything together. So once this is connected, I select the region where my data is. So by default, it's US, and we just connect it.
Yeah, one thing we forgot to mention is the reason why you have two APIs is that you've had one running for a while, just so we had some data to show during the webinar. But so if you're trying to follow along, you'll just get like a few data points. Obviously, Moody is going to have like tons of data points just because we've been prepping this for a little while. So that's going to be the main difference that you'll see.
Yep, that's an important point. So yeah, so I already have like one production application running, so I have a lot of data to show. But but I would recommend like you to setting up Neuralink and kind of deploy a production application on that, and then you can get the data in Postman. So yep, for this tab, as you can see, both of our monitors are already sending data to Neuralink, so we don't need to do that. So and we already covered this. And yes, once it is done, you will see the basic stats here. Now let's go through each of these. So here is our service name. Here is the latency, how it is being perceived by end user. Here is the current error rate, which is 6%, pretty high. So let's look into it, what's happening. Here's the AppDex, which we'll get into, like what it is. And there is the health status that basically tells you what is the overall health of our application. So this is decided based upon the alerts. So if there's any alert, then you will see that this will go red. So let's go into it.
Okay, what is the AppDex? I feel like I need to ask the question.
Yeah, so yes, okay, now it's open. Okay, so yes, let's look into what is AppDex. Oh, really sorry. Yep. Okay, so here you can see there's a time bar. I'm getting the data for last 3 hours. So I will come to AppDex in the next slide. So here you can see this is the response time, and this is a sample Node.js application. So here you can see we have a response time for Node.js. We have a response time, how much time the request is taking to get to the application. And yeah, this is pretty useful metric. And now we have throughput, like how many requests are coming, what is error rate, and we can see like sudden spikes of error rate. So we'll debug that. And yes, coming to the question of Alimi, what is AppDex score? So AppDex score is an industry standard to kind of measure the satisfaction or the dissatisfaction of the user. So it is a combination of the response time and the error rate, and it helps you to basically decide how satisfied your end user is. So we know we cannot give like a similar experience to every user. Like we cannot have like 100% uptime for every user. That's why the issues that are faced by a subset of users or a group of users, AppDex helps us to detect that. So AppDex score is calculated based upon a threshold. So currently, let's take if your threshold is 0.1 second, okay, so which is 100 millisecond. If your response time is between 100 millisecond and 4 times your threshold, which is 400 millisecond, then we can say the performance is in this yellow area, which is 100 millisecond. If your response time is between 100 millisecond and 4 times your threshold, which is 4 times your threshold, then we can say the performance is in this red area, which is 100 millisecond. which basically means that your users are satisfied. If it's in the green area, then that's great. But if it goes more than 400 milliseconds, if your application is responding very slow, then it goes into this red and gray area, which basically means that your users are not satisfied and they are receiving this frustrated performance from the application. So Apdex helps us this way to give us a single entry point metric, which can help us to basically judge like what is the state of the application right now and how we can bring it back up. So it is a good indicator during incidents or outages where we can bring back this metric up into this green or yellow area, and we are good to go. But if it's a red area, there is a concern. So yes, that's what it shows. Here you can look at the recent alerts that might have been triggered. And yes, this is a drill down for all the API calls that are going in. So all the calls, what is their duration, what is the error rate? And here I'm seeing like /time call. That's pretty weird about it. Like it has 100% error rate. Every call is erroring out. And that might be the reason of this dipping Apdex. So let's debug that. And yes, any kind of deployments that might have happened in last 1 or 2 days will also show up here. So from here, like what we want to do now is like, we have got the alert that something is wrong. We went to this view in Postman, and here we can see the Apdex is dipping. So now we have everything here. We have our API definition. We have our API observability metrics. We got the alert. Now it is about fixing the issue for users. And for that, what we'll do is like, we'll go to New Relic. Yes, so we go to New Relic. So this is the application that you can see here. Yeah, here, as you can see, here you can also see there's a dip in Apdex score. So here, there we were viewing the 3 hours data. So here, let's make it 3 hours. So you will see the similar pattern. And yes, the error rate is also very high. So let's see what's happening. And now we will look into how exactly to debug an issue in an APM tool. So that's where like we look into 3 pillars that Alimi mentioned: traces, logs, and metrics. So traces, I will give an example. So here New Relic terms it like distributed tracing. Datadog might term it as something else. So here we know there is something up with get/time. So here we go into this trace and look, and here, as you can see, there's one error. So it's pretty concerning. So we go ahead and see that it's red. So there is one error that is happening. So we check the logs. Now traces are connected to logs. And here we see this error log that basically says like it's a bad request received from the client, and we expected a path param here. So that explains that the request that came for /time is not a correct path, and application is kind of rejecting it. This is how we are able to detect the issue. So now the next step, what we do is like we go back to our API definition and we look for this path /time, and we see like, oh, we haven't passed the param here. Why it was deployed like this? This is the time we are back to Postman definition. We started from here. Now we are ended here, and we have an issue to fix now. So what we'll do is like we'll update our definition. And this is just the example that I'm showing. There can be like multiple cases. So we just update our definition to add a path param. So for example, let's take it accepts an ID. So we update that, and then we'll deploy it. So let me simply go to swagger.io. I just did a normal search for like add path param in OpenAPI spec, OpenAPI 3. Okay, so here I go to this website, and here I can see this is how I can add a path param. So so I just copy it, I add it here. Okay, so I add it here. Okay.
So that's part of the while Moodit is doing this. That's part of the, if you remember what we talked about at the start, the API lifecycle for a producer. you start from defining, etc. You go all the way and you observe. And if you observe anything, then it's a life cycle. It keeps on going. So you observe something that's not working, you go back to defining, or you go back to testing, etc. And that's a perpetual cycle of deploy, test, deploy, observe, and then we keep on fixing as we go.
Yes, thanks, Arimi, for that. Yes, I think I missed like one property. Yeah. Okay, so I have added it. There's some YAML issue.
Yeah, it might just be some
yeah.
YAML like syntax.
Yeah.
So if you click on syntax at the bottom quickly, it should. Okay, so it's just some syntax issue. I think if you don't want to spend too much time on it, that's fine. We can move on unless you really want to fix it.
Yeah, I think I think I need to adjust the indentation because I think it's not I think there's a mix of tab and spaces here because I just copied it. So yeah. So yeah, that's an example. Like from the log here, like we got to know that something is up. So we have updated in our definition. We'll deploy it now, and that will be the expected behavior for the user. And yes, those errors will be gone.
So trust us, I guess. That's one of the issue I always have with YAML is if you don't know exactly what a space is, then we have Girish in the chat saying the issue is parameters. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think. Oh, yeah, I think there's some copy.
So the operation doesn't define. So you're not using ID.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, thanks. The one like who pointed out parameter. I think we copied
Girish.
it, but yeah.
So now you could save these, deploy.
Yes, we can save it, and we can publish this definition and later deploy it based upon the deployment mechanism like we are using.
Nice.
Okay, so just publish this API with the definition. Yes, and it should reflect to my teammates. Cool. Over to you, Alimi.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to start sharing again. If you give me 1 second, just need to find the right screen. It should be this one. So again, quick summary of what Moody did. Started from a collection in Postman, which kind of describes how you use your service, and you can add tests to it. So from there, you can create a monitor that runs like on a schedule. So it's going to be every hour, maybe every 15 minutes or something like that. Send that data to your APM tool, so application performance monitoring tool. And then from there, you can detect if there's an issue. So you can set up like specific alerts and your own like policies. If there's an alert, you get alerted through whichever mean you want, Slack, email, webbook, etc. And once you have that information, you can jump in, and that's that part that Moody showed as well, which is, okay, let's have a look at the traces, have a look at the logs. And then the logs kind of showed us that it was missing something in the API. So we went in, fixed it, and then we would have deployed it if we had that whole process in place, but that's not the point of this webinar. So we didn't go all the way there, but that's kind of the workflow. Now, what I want to show you is we looked at it at a single API level, but one thing that you may be interested in Postman is kind of a higher level. How many of my APIs are being tested against, for example, or how many APIs do I have as a whole, which is not quite API observability. It's more like a higher level of governance within your team. So I'm here in an enterprise team. So that feature is enterprise specific. So that's why I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But good to know if your company is using Postman Enterprise or if you're interested in upgrading. If you're on your homepage here, so the same place where you can see your integrations overview, you have this reports section. So if you click on there, straight from the summary page, you see the total number of APIs, and then you see them filtered by how many of them are being monitored, how many of them have tests, documentation, etc. So if I were to like untick most of them, I can see a huge disparity between the two. And that's something that's relevant for you as you are like implementing monitoring or observability within your team. You want to make sure that you've got coverage. It doesn't need to be one-on-one. Maybe some of these APIs are just like test APIs, etc. But it still gives you an idea of what to look at. You've got all the data that's available, either like for API response time, and then you can like dive in the same way. But also at the team level, workspaces level for security and governance. And these are all like team-wide. So just like general reports for your team. And if you're wanting to learn more about this, there's a link in the chat that Pooja just shared. So feel free to click on there. So that was the quick one about reports. I'm going to move back to the slides and let's keep on going. So that was it for the demo part and for the explanation. Hopefully, you've learned all of this. So all of this being what observability is, how do you look at observability in Postman, and how do you like use external integration? So we focused on New Relic, but you can use Datadog, and you've got other integrations coming up. I know we had, I think, Alexander in the chat asking if we support Grafana. We do not support Grafana yet. But I'm going to share a link in the chat, which is this one. For any more integrations that you would like to see, do add your feature request there. That's where the product team looks for new ideas and things that may be asked for. We support tons of integrations. So if there's one you're using and you don't see yet, post it there, and we'll have a look at it and prioritize based on how many people are asking. And then the last thing we talked about was how to do reporting in Postman quickly. So we have a bit of time left, some time for Q&A. So I know there was a few questions in the chat. I'm going to look through them as well. But in the meantime, while I look at the Q&A, we have a link for a survey for this session. So I mentioned that at the start. Please give us your feedback if you thought this session was too long. Maybe there was too much information, not enough. Maybe it was too much like hands-on, not enough slides. Maybe you didn't like my voice. I don't know. Just anything that you may think is relevant for us to like improve on, or maybe like future topics that you wanna hear about. Post it there, and I think Pooja, once again, thank you. Posted a link in the chat. So go there, click on it. It's just a few questions, and it helps us improve for this session. So let me have a look at the questions we've had. So we had some questions about was the session recorded? So yes, it's recorded. We'll be sending the recording to everyone along with the slides and the useful links in a few days, as soon as like we've updated the session. We had questions about importing collections, so I've answered that when it came up. And then so Alexander's question about Grafana. I don't think we've got anything else at the moment. So unless anyone wants to jump in now and ask a question either in the chat or QA section. But in the meantime, I'm going to skip to the next slide just so you have something else to look at, which is useful information, like links that we think are relevant for you to live with. So the first one is that session is Postman Intergalactic. So that's what we called. That's what we call our training sessions. We have a homepage, which is the postman.com/event/intergalactic, but we already have the next session. That's not on that website, but that you can already register for. It's kind of like a preview for you because you attended that one. So we have the next session, which is going to be collaboration and governance in your API teams. And same again. The link is in the chat. So click on there, get registered. This one is happening on the 25th of January. So plenty of time. We don't want to bother anyone during the holidays with more sessions. And now I see we have some good questions coming in. Is Postman better than BlazeMater? Well, you're on a Postman session, so I can't really say one or the other, actually. It really depends on what you're doing. There's a tool for everything. There's a tool for everyone. If you're doing API testing, API monitoring, API design, etc., Postman may be better. And my knowledge about Blazemeter is actually quite limited, so I can't really compare them. But yeah, that would be my answer to that question. A few more links. Again, if you have more questions, post them there. 30 days of Postman for developers. If you're familiar with 100 days of code, which is like a 100 days long challenge where you do a quick thing every day, it's a similar thing. It's just for 30 days and within Postman. So you can go in there and give it a try. The community forum, any questions you may have that you may not have thought about it during this session, or maybe it's going to come up later, go and ask them there. All of us are there and we'll answer your questions as we see them coming in. And then the last one is Postman Answers. So if you're familiar with Postman in general, there's like some flows that come back over and over. So instead of reinventing the wheel, you can go in that workspace and there's a bunch of collections that show you how to do, for example, how to loop over a request, or maybe how to pass data between one request and the next one. This type of like typical workflows that you may be interested in. So you can go in that workspace, fork it, and then get started without having to reinvent everything. Cool. So I don't see any more questions. I'll give everyone 5 minutes back of their time. Thank you all for joining. Thank you Mudit, for being here and helping us with that session.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's it. Have a good day, everyone. We'll be in touch with the links very soon. And that's it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.